Hey, my sweet viewers. Before we dive into today's video, I have a small, heartfelt request. If you're enjoying our content and want to be part of this amazing journey, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support means the world to me, and it helps us continue bringing you the best content possible. Thank you for being here now. Let's get started. My name is Joe, and I live in Russia. I recently moved to the city for work, and like many, was hunting for a place to rent. The apartment market in the city was brutal, with prices skyrocketing everywhere. I was getting desperate when I stumbled upon a listing that seemed too good to be true. Apartment 13B. The rent was low, the location central, and it had all the space I needed. When I went to see it, the landlord, a hunched-over old man with a cigarette hanging from his lips, barely said a word. He just handed me the keys with a strange look in his eyes. I chalked it up to him being tired or cranky. "You'll be the only one on that floor," he said before I left. "No one stays there for long." I brushed it off. Superstitions and spooky stories didn't bother me. I moved in the following weekend. It was quiet, unnaturally so. Even with the bustling city streets below, the apartment seemed insulated from the world outside. The silence was thick, almost suffocating, and the cold, I couldn't shake how cold it was. I remember thinking the insulation must be terrible. But no matter how high I cranked the thermostat, the chill never left. That first night, something happened that I couldn't explain. I woke up at exactly 3 a.m., startled by a faint noise. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up in bed, squinting into the darkness, trying to locate the source. The noise was soft, like someone tapping on a distant wall or floor. I told myself it must be the pipes or maybe something outside. Old buildings always have their quirks, right? But it didn't stop. Every night, without fail, the tapping returned at 3 a.m., growing louder, more insistent. At first, it was a mild annoyance, but as the nights passed, it became impossible to ignore. The noise wasn't random, it was rhythmic, deliberate, like someone was trying to communicate. Then, things escalated. One night, after another bout of tapping, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow. Just a fleeting figure at the far end of the hallway near my bedroom door. I blinked, and it was gone. My rational mind told me it was just a trick of the light, maybe the way the shadows moved as cars passed outside. But my gut knew better. The next few nights were a living nightmare. Every time I woke up, the shadow was there, standing closer. At first it was distant, lurking near the door. Then, it was in the hallway. Then, right at the foot of my bed. It never moved, just stood there, staring at me with hollow black eyes. My skin crawled, and I felt a chill down my spine. But every time I blinked, the figure would vanish, leaving me questioning my sanity. Then, one night it spoke. It was around 3:15 a.m., and I had just woken up to the now familiar tapping. The room was frigid, colder than ever before, and I could see my breath in the air. That's when I heard the whisper, soft, barely audible, "Get out, Dot." The voice didn't feel threatening. It felt like a warning. I lay there, frozen in fear, unable to move or even breathe. The figure stood at the end of my bed, closer than ever before. I could feel its eyes on me, feel the cold radiating from its presence. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry, my body locked in place by fear. The next day, I called the landlord, determined to figure out what was happening in 13B. He sighed, like he had been expecting the call. He told me about Eleanor, the previous tenant. Years ago, she had lived in 13B. She was reclusive, kept to herself. but her neighbors often heard her talking, except she lived alone. One night, they heard her screaming. By the time anyone called the police, it was too late. They found Eleanor sitting in the middle of her bedroom, surrounded by broken mirrors and blood. But there was no one else there. No one ever figured out what happened to the person she had been talking to, or if there had even been anyone there at all. Eleanor was taken away to a mental institution. She never spoke about that night, but her last words before she was admitted haunted me. "He's still there, Dot." That evening, I started packing my bags. I wasn't about to stick around to see what Eleanor had meant. But that night, my last night in the apartment, things got worse. Much worse. It was 3 a.m. when I woke up again, but this time the air was thick with a sense of dread. The tapping was no longer just a distant sound, it was right behind my walls, getting louder faster. The temperature dropped until it felt like ice in the air. My breath came out in shallow puffs, and I could hear my heart racing. Suddenly, the figure was there. No longer just a shadow in the distance, it stood right at the side of my bed. I could see its hollow black eyes staring into mine. And then, a low growl filled the room, vibrating through the floor, through my bones. I bolted to the door, but it wouldn't open. Locked, Dot. The whisper came again, louder this time, right behind me.
"Too late."
I spun around, and it was right there, its cold, dead hand wrapping around my wrist. I felt the room spin, darkness creeping in as the figure pulled me toward the center of the room. I don't remember much after that. When I woke up, I was lying on the cold floor. The door was wide open. The apartment was silent. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bags and ran, leaving everything behind. I haven't been back to 13B since, but sometimes when I'm alone at night, I still hear the tapping. So, if you're ever looking for a place to rent, and the price seems too good to be true, take my advice, don't take it. It may be cheap, but the cost could be far worse. You might not like what you find lurking inside.